Dr. Leora Dane had spent most of her life chasing the impossible. From her earliest years on Earth, she had been fascinated by the mysteries of the human mind. While other children played with toys, she would watch her own thoughts, trying to understand the invisible paths her mind took when it wandered. Now, aboard Elysium 9, a massive orbital station floating silently above Earth, she was finally at the frontier of discovery. Her lab was cluttered with equipment, wires, and glowing screens, each hum of machinery echoing the pulse of her ambition. But among all this technology, one device drew her attention more than any other: the Neuralink. The Neuralink was not just a machine. To Leora, it was a key that could unlock the deepest corners of a person's consciousness. It had been years in the making, with countless failed experiments and sleepless nights. Every time she tested it, she felt the weight of responsibility. One wrong calculation, one oversight, and a mind could be damaged permanently. Yet, the potential rewards were far greater than any risk. Imagine seeing the world through someone else's thoughts, understanding not only their memories, but their feelings, fears, and hopes, and perhaps one day, glimpsing something beyond the limits of human imagination. Her work had been theoretical for years. She had trained volunteers, but until now, no one had approached her with what she considered the perfect test case. And then Cale appeared. He had arrived quietly, walking into the lab without announcement. His presence was calm, almost unnervingly so, but there was something about him that demanded attention. He was tall, with a lean frame, dark hair that curled slightly at the edges, and eyes that seemed too deep to belong to a human. Leora had been briefed on his background, though it was sketchy at best. He claimed to have experiences far beyond the ordinary and said he had memories that were not his own. Most scientists would have dismissed him as eccentric or worse, but Leora's curiosity overruled caution. She sensed that he was different. Dr. Dane Cale said, his voice smooth, almost melodic. "I understand you wish to explore what lies within my mind?" "Yes," Leora replied, trying to steady the tremor in her voice. "But you must understand the risks. Even with the Neuralink, delving too deep can be disorienting." Cale smiled faintly. "I have lived with disorientation for most of my life. I am ready." It was rare to encounter someone so calm in the face of the unknown. Leora took a deep breath and gestured toward the Neuralink. The device looked like a crown of thin metal wires interwoven with glowing circuits. Sensors would attach to the scalp and temples, reading electrical impulses while projecting them into the lab's interface. Leora had tested it on dozens of volunteers, but none had come close to what she felt when she looked at Cale. His mind radiated something she could not explain: a faint shimmer of energy, almost like a heartbeat echoing across space and time. "Please, sit here," she said, motioning to the chair at the center of the lab. Cale did so without hesitation. She carefully placed the Neuralink on his head, adjusting the sensors to ensure they had full contact. Her fingers trembled slightly as she connected the final wires. "Are you ready?" she asked. Cale nodded. "Always." Leora activated the device. A soft hum filled the room as the Neuralink powered up. On the main screen, a series of lines began to form patterns that represented Cale's neural activity. At first, it looked like a simple reading, brain waves rising and falling in predictable rhythms. She guided the interface to probe deeper, gently coaxing the device to access memories and thoughts. The first images were ordinary. Cale's childhood home, a small cottage on a distant planet she had never visited, the smell of wet grass after rain, laughter echoing through the hallways. Leora smiled at the simplicity. These were the moments that made humans human. But then, almost without warning, the patterns changed. The lines on the screen twisted into unfamiliar shapes, glowing faintly as though alive. Leora's breath caught. The images in her mind shifted suddenly. She was no longer just observing Cale's thoughts. She was inside them. Colors and shapes danced in ways she had never seen. Buildings formed from light and sound. Creatures that seemed impossible moved gracefully, their forms constantly changing. Leora stumbled backward slightly, holding the edge of a console to steady herself. "Cale," she whispered, almost afraid to speak. What? What are these? They are fragments, Kale said, his voice calm. Memories of worlds I have known, of times I have witnessed. Not all of them belong to me. Leora's mind reeled. She had read about shared consciousness experiments in theory, but nothing had prepared her for this. It was as if Kale's mind contained entire civilizations, each with its own history, language, and culture. And she was seeing it all at once. Her hands shook as she adjusted the Neuralink, trying to focus. She saw mountains taller than any on Earth, oceans that shimmered with colors she had no words for, skies filled with twin suns and swirling storms of energy. She saw cities made entirely of light and knowledge, floating in the void. And she saw people strange, magnificent beings whose thoughts intertwined with the environment itself. Leora, Kale said softly, "Do you see it?" "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. I see it. But it's too much. You must learn to let it flow," Kale advised. "Do not resist. Only then can you understand." She closed her eyes, forcing herself to focus. Slowly, the chaos began to make sense. The visions were not random. They were memories, preserved and layered, waiting for someone to witness them. Leora realized that Kale's mind was not just his own. It carried the echoes of countless experiences, some belonging to beings she could barely comprehend. Then came the moment that made her scream. A shadow flickered across her vision, something she could not identify at first. It was a thought, but not a friendly one. It was sharp, urgent, and full of warning. Images of destruction flashed through her mind, planets shattered, civilizations collapsing, energy storms consuming entire worlds. And in the center of it all was a force, alien and incomprehensible. Moving silently, but with unstoppable intent, Leora's heart pounded in her chest. She stumbled backward, nearly falling out of her chair. "Stop! Stop the link!" she shouted, fumbling with the controls. Kale's voice remained calm. "It is not a threat. It is a warning. You are seeing only a fragment, one that must be understood, not feared." But Leora could not calm herself. Her eyes were wide, her mind racing. She had glimpsed something far beyond human understanding, something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. And though Kale's voice was reassuring, a part of her knew that nothing would ever feel ordinary again. Finally, with trembling hands, she disengaged the Neuralink. The hum of the device ceased, and the lab was quiet once more. She sank into her chair, gasping for breath. Kale removed the device gently, as if nothing had happened. "Are you all right?" he asked. I think so," Leora said, her voice shaking. She looked at him, her mind still reeling. What are you?" Kale smiled faintly. "Something between worlds. Something that carries knowledge meant for those ready to see it. And now you are ready." Leora stared at him, unsure whether to feel awe or fear. The images she had witnessed were burned into her mind. She could not unsee them. And yet part of her knew that this was only the beginning. Whatever lay within Kale's mind, it held secrets that could change humanity forever. She survived the journey to understand them. As she sat in silence, her thoughts began to settle. One thing was certain: she could not turn back. She had crossed a threshold, peered into the unknown, and the universe had opened its doors to her. And somewhere in the vastness of Kale's mind, a warning waited. One she would have to understand before it was too late. Leora's scream had not been of fear alone. It had been the sound of awe. The first cry of someone who had seen the infinite and realized how small yet extraordinary humanity could be, and above Elysium 9. The stars continued to shine, indifferent to the secrets they now held. After the first experiment, Leora could not sleep. Even in the quiet of her private quarters, the images from Kale's mind haunted her. She kept seeing flashes of towering cities built from light, creatures that shimmered like liquid crystal, and endless skies swirling with color. Every time she closed her eyes, the visions returned, more vivid than before. She had always known that the human mind was extraordinary, but what she had glimpsed went beyond extraordinary. It was cosmic. In the lab, Kale waited calmly. He had been patient all morning, as if he knew she would come. Leora hesitated before entering. She had spent hours pacing the corridors, thinking, wondering if she had been reckless. But curiosity outweighed caution. She needed answers. She needed to know what she had seen. Kale's presence was steady, grounding. "You did not sleep well," he said softly. I can't stop seeing it," Leora admitted. She gestured to the Neuralink, still glowing faintly on the table. "It's too much. I saw things I cannot explain." "How is this possible?" Kale tilted his head. "Your mind is like a calm lake. Mine is more like an ocean during a storm. There are layers. Some are calm, some are violent. What you saw was only the surface." Leora swallowed hard. "Only the surface. You mean theirs?" More. Kale nodded. "Much more. Memories, experiences, histories. Some are mine, some belong to others whose minds I have touched in ways you cannot imagine. I can guide you, but you must be willing to see the truth." Leora hesitated. She knew the risks. Diving deeper into someone else's consciousness could be dangerous. One wrong move, and her own mind could fracture under the weight of knowledge. But the temptation was irresistible. She had spent her life seeking the unknown, and now it was within reach. "All right," she said finally. "I'll try again. But slowly, carefully." Kale smiled faintly. "That is wise. Patience is necessary." She adjusted the Neuralink on Kale's head, this time moving more slowly, deliberately. Every sensor was checked twice. The hum of the device filled the lab once more. Leora placed her hands on the controls, fingers trembling slightly, heart racing. "Ready?" she asked. Kale nodded, closing his eyes. "I am always ready." The device powered up. This time, Leora felt a gentle pull as the interface connected to Kale's consciousness. The first images were calm memories of peaceful landscapes. Sunlight filtering through alien forests, laughter echoing in cities of glass. She felt herself relaxing slightly. These were easier to comprehend, familiar in a strange way. But then the deeper layers began to emerge. Suddenly, Leora was no longer in the lab. Her body remained seated, but her mind had been transported to another world. She stood in the midst of a vast city, unlike any she had ever seen. Towers of crystal stretched high into the sky, their surfaces shimmering with colors that had no names. Vehicles floated silently through the air, moving as though guided by thought alone. And people-lore beings walked among them, their forms fluid, constantly shifting, yet somehow entirely natural. Leora's breath caught. She had never imagined anything like this. She could hear the faint hum of energy, feel the warmth of light as it moved around her. It was beautiful, uninspiring, almost overwhelming. "Do you see it?" Kale's voice echoed in her mind. "Yes," she whispered. "It's incredible. But what is this place?" "This is a memory," Kale explained. "A fragment of a civilization that existed long before humans learned to travel to the stars. I carry pieces of many worlds like this. Some are alive, some are gone. All of them are real." Leora's eyes widened. You mean these civilizations actually existed?" Kale nodded. "Yes. Some were destroyed, some evolved into forms you cannot imagine. They trusted me with their memories to preserve them." As she explored, Leora noticed something else. The memories were not random. They were organized, layered, almost like a library of experience. She could move through them, step by step, each layer revealing a new story, a new world. And then she saw the shadow she had glimpsed before. It was faint at first, almost hidden like a ripple in a calm pond. But as she focused, it became clearer. Planets burned, civilizations crumbled, and energy storms consumed entire landscapes. Unlike the other memories, this one carried emotion, fear, urgency, and a sense of warning. Leora stumbled backward in the lab chair, her hands gripping the console. "Kale, what is that?" "It is a warning," Kale said softly. "Not mine, but part of what I carry. It is a message from a coalition of worlds I have encountered. They faced what is coming, and they failed. I carry the memory to help you prepare, to help humanity survive what lies ahead. Leora felt a chill run through her body. The warning was not just a story, it was a reality. She could feel the weight of it pressing against her mind, heavy and urgent. How can I understand it? It's too much. I can barely make sense of it. You must let it flow, Kale said. Do not fight it. Observe, learn, piece by piece. Taking a deep breath, Leora closed her eyes and focused. Slowly, the chaos began to make sense. She saw the rise and fall of civilizations, entire histories compressed into fragments of memory. She saw beings who had mastered energy and time, who had built cities that floated among stars. She saw wars fought with light and sound, peace maintained by understanding and cooperation, and then she saw the force behind the warning, a cosmic anomaly, massive and unstoppable, moving through the galaxy. It was not alive, not in the way she understood life, but it was intelligent in a way she could barely grasp. It had no malice, yet it reshaped everything it touched. The civilizations that had failed were consumed by it, leaving nothing but echoes in Kale's mind. Leora's hands shook as she tried to process it. She had always imagined threats to humanity, natural disasters, war, disease, but this was something else entirely. Something beyond human comprehension. Kale, why are you showing me this? She whispered. Because you must be ready, he said. Humanity will face choices it has never imagined. Knowledge is the first step. Understanding is the second. Fear is the third, and you must rise above it. Leora's mind raced. She realized that what she had seen was not just a warning, it was a lesson. The images were chaotic, overwhelming, but they carried patterns. She began to notice them, strategies, solutions, ways civilizations had survived or failed. Slowly, she pieced together the fragments, understanding the logic behind the chaos. Hours passed without her noticing. The lab around her seemed distant, unimportant. She was inside Kale's mind, exploring a library of universes, learning lessons that could save her world. And yet, despite the wonder, a part of her remained terrified. The scope of what she was seeing was beyond anything humanity had encountered. One mistake, one misunderstanding, and the knowledge could become a curse instead of a gift. Finally, she opened her eyes. The visions faded, leaving her back in the lab, her heart pounding. Kale's calm presence was reassuring, but she knew that nothing would ever feel ordinary again. You did well, he said quietly. Few humans could have endured what you just witnessed. Leora leaned back, trying to steady herself. It's incredible, but it's also terrifying. How do we even begin to prepare for something like that? Kale looked out the window at the stars beyond Elysium 9. One step at a time. First, you must understand it fully. Then you can teach others. Knowledge is the most powerful weapon of all. Leora nodded, her resolve strengthening. She had glimpsed the infinite, and though it had terrified her, it had also inspired her. She could not turn back. Humanity's future depended on understanding what she had seen, and she would face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time, she understood the true purpose of her work. It was not just science, it was a bridge to the universe, a way to prepare humanity for what lay beyond the stars. And in Kale's mind, she had found the guide she needed. As she looked at him, she realized something else. Kale was not just a volunteer or a subject. He was a teacher, a guardian, and perhaps even a friend. And together, they would navigate the vast, unexplored territories of consciousness, learning lessons that could change the course of human history. And above them, the stars of the galaxy continued to shine, waiting patiently for humanity to awaken. Leora Dane could still feel the echo of what she had seen in Kale's mind. Even now, as she walked through the corridors of Elysium 9, the memory of vast cities of light and alien landscapes refused to fade. Each step reminded her that her world was far smaller than she had imagined, that humanity's understanding of the universe was only a whisper in the infinite. But despite the awe, one question burned in her mind. Why was Kale here? Why had he come to Haran to humanity? That evening, the lab was quiet. The hum of machines was the only sound, and the stars beyond the windows were cold and distant. Cale stood by the observation deck, looking out into the vastness of space as though he could read the secrets of the cosmos written among the stars. "You are thinking too much," Cale said, turning to her. "Your mind is restless. It wants answers before it is ready." "I need answers," Leora replied. "What you showed me, it's too much. I saw civilizations rise and fall. I saw entire worlds destroyed. And that anomaly you said it is coming. What is it? What are we facing?" Cale sighed softly. "It is difficult to explain. I can only give you fragments. I do not wish to frighten you, but the truth is not gentle. You must be prepared." Leora nodded, gripping the edge of the console. "Then tell me. I can take it. I have to know." Cale closed his eyes, and Leora watched as the faint glow around his head seemed to pulse, as though responding to her intensity. "I am not from this galaxy," he began. "I was sent by a coalition of species from across the stars. They foresaw a force that could destroy worlds, a force that bends reality itself. My purpose is to carry their warning to humanity. But the knowledge is not easy to share. The human mind is unprepared for the full scope of what is coming." Leora's heart raced. "A force that bends reality. What does that mean? How can we survive something like that?" "You must understand it first," Cale said. "Knowledge alone is not enough. You must comprehend the patterns, the logic, the lessons embedded in the memories I carry. Only then can humanity begin to act." He gestured toward the Neuralink. "If you are ready, we can continue. There is more to see. There are civilizations that succeeded and civilizations that failed. Each offers insight. You must see both." Leora hesitated for a moment. Fear and excitement battled inside her. She had survived the first exploration barely, and yet she could not resist. Curiosity outweighed caution. "I am ready," she said finally. Cale smiled faintly and settled into the chair, as if he had been expecting this moment. Leora carefully adjusted the Neuralink, ensuring every sensor was perfectly aligned. She took a deep breath and activated the device. Immediately, she felt the pull again, a sensation like diving into a vast, invisible ocean. The first images were civilization thriving on a planet of water. Beings with translucent skin gliding gracefully through the oceans, communicating through pulses of light. Leora watched, fascinated, as they worked together to maintain harmony. Building cities that floated on the surface and sank beneath the waves without disturbing life below. These civilizations, they adapted to everything, Leora whispered. "They don't fight each other, they learn from each other," as Cale said. "Some succeeded because they understood cooperation. Others failed because they sought power over knowledge. Every memory has a lesson." Then the scene shifted abruptly. Leora felt a surge of tension in her chest as she was pulled into a new memory. This one was darker. A planet of fire and storms, where civilizations had fallen into chaos. Beings fought endlessly for control of energy that could have healed or created, but instead destroyed. The cities crumbled, swallowed by molten rivers, and the air was thick with the screams of those who had tried and failed. Leora gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. "It's horrifying. How could anyone survive this?" "They did not," Cale said. "The knowledge they ignored, the mistakes they repeated, these are the warnings I carry. Observe carefully. Learn the difference between wisdom and folly." Leora nodded, her mind racing. She could see patterns emerging, the hidden logic in the chaos. Even in destruction, there was order lessons embedded in failure. She realized that Cale's mind was not just a repository of memories. It was a library of history on a cosmic scale, a living guide to survival, to understanding, to mastery of knowledge itself. Then she saw something more personal, something that shook her deeply. A fragment of Cale's own life, a life that was not fully human, yet painfully relatable. Memories of loneliness, of being misunderstood, of wandering from planet to planet in search of purpose. She saw his joy at discovering civilizations, his sorrow at witnessing their collapse, and the weight of responsibility he carried as a messenger of knowledge. Leora felt a pang of empathy. Kale was not just a guide. He was a witness, a guardian, and a teacher. His mind contained both the wonder of the universe and the burden of knowing too much. Kale, why did you choose humanity? Why not someone else? She asked softly. Because humanity has potential, he replied. I have seen what you can become. You are young, curious, and adaptable. You are not yet burdened by the cynicism that destroys other civilizations. But potential alone is not enough. You must be ready to act, to think beyond your fears, to understand the universe as it truly is. Leora swallowed hard. The weight of his words settled on her shoulders. She realized that what she had glimpsed was more than a warning, it was a call to action. Humanity's future depended not only on knowledge, but on wisdom and courage. The memory shifted again. This time Leora was pulled into a moment of cosmic scale. A star system being reshaped by immense forces, planets shifting in orbit, suns flickering with unstable energy. She saw civilizations trying to flee, using technology and cooperation to survive, while others were consumed by the storm. The anomaly Kale had warned her about was here, in fragments, moving inexorably toward systems like hers. Leora's hands trembled on the console. We are not ready for this. Humanity has nothing like this. Kale's voice was calm, almost comforting. Not yet. That is why I am here. That is why you are here. Knowledge is preparation. Wisdom is survival. Fear is a choice. You may choose to let it control you or to rise above it. She closed her eyes and focused, forcing herself to see clearly through the chaos. Slowly she began to understand. The anomaly was not evil, it was indifferent. It had no desire to harm, but its nature reshaped everything it touched. Survival would require more than strength or technology. It would require understanding, cooperation, and adaptation on a scale humanity had never imagined. Leora felt a mixture of awe and terror. She realized that she was holding the key to humanity's future, not in weapons or defenses, but in knowledge. If she could learn, understand, and teach, perhaps humanity could survive what was coming. If not, the consequences were unimaginable. Hours passed as she navigated the labyrinth of Kale's mind. Every fragment of memory brought new lessons, new revelations, new perspectives. She saw civilizations that had mastered energy, learned to communicate across light years, and harmonized with the cosmos itself. She saw others that had failed, destroyed by pride, fear, or ignorance. And she saw herself reflected in the patterns of survival, her curiosity, her determination, her ability to see beyond fear. Finally, she emerged from the Neuralink, exhausted but enlightened. Her hands were trembling, her heart pounding, but there was clarity now for a work. A roadmap, a series of lessons humanity could follow. She looked at Kale, who sat calmly, as though he had expected this outcome. You have done well, he said. Few humans could have endured what you have seen. Few could have learned from it. Leora nodded, her resolve firming. We have a lot of work to do, she said. Not just for me or for you, but for everyone. We have to prepare humanity. Kale's eyes gleamed faintly. Yes, but first, you must understand fully. Only then can you teach others. Knowledge is a weapon, a shield, and a guide. Use it wisely. Leora leaned back in her chair, her mind still racing with visions of distant worlds, alien civilizations, and cosmic forces. She realized that the scream she had let out during the first experiment had been only the beginning. She had seen the universe in fragments, but now she was beginning to understand its patterns. And with understanding came responsibility, the responsibility to prepare humanity for the challenges that lay ahead. For the first time, she felt the weight of her purpose. She was not just a scientist, not just an observer. She was a bridge between humanity and the vast, infinite cosmos. And with Kale's guidance, she would learn everything she needed to know to face the coming storm. As the stars outside Elysium 9 twinkled coldly, Leora made a silent promise. She would not falter. Humanity would awaken, and she would be ready to help guide them. The lab of Elysium 9 was quiet, but Leora Dane's mind was anything but calm. The images she had seen in Kale's mind continued to swirl in her thoughts. Each memory, each vision, was a puzzle she had to piece together. She realized now that the first glimpses were only the surface. To truly understand the warning Kale carried, she had to delve deeper, navigate the complex layers of his consciousness, and face challenges unlike any she had imagined. "Are you ready for the next step?" Kale asked, standing beside the Neuralink. His calm presence reassured her, though her stomach twisted with nervous anticipation. "I think I am," Leora said, her voice firm, but her hands trembling slightly. She adjusted the device on Kale's head, double-checking the sensors. "I have to do this. Humanity depends on it," Kale nodded. "Then we proceed." The Neuralink hummed to life, filling the lab with its soft, steady vibration. Leora focused, and almost immediately, she felt the familiar pull. A sensation like being drawn into a vast, invisible ocean. She closed her eyes, letting the images flow into her mind. At first, it was like walking through a familiar landscape. Memories of Kale's travels, the civilizations he had visited, unfolded before her. She moved carefully, observing details she had missed before, the way beings communicated through colors and patterns, the subtle changes in energy that shaped their cities, and the way entire worlds adapted to survive. But soon, the images became more complex. Layers of memories stacked upon one another, overlapping in ways that made it difficult to distinguish one from the other. Civilizations that had thrived clashed in her vision with those that had fallen. Leora felt the weight of knowledge pressing on her mind. Every fragment she encountered seemed alive, demanding attention, refusing to be ignored. "This is more than I expected," she whispered. "It's overwhelming," Kale's voice echoed gently in her mind. "You must not resist. Let the layers unfold. Each memory contains lessons. Learn them carefully." Leora focused, guiding herself through the labyrinth of Kale's mind. She saw towering cities that floated among the clouds of gas giants, streets made of liquid crystal that reflected the light of multiple suns. She saw starships powered by thought alone, moving through space without fuel, guided by the consciousness of those aboard. She saw civilizations that had learned to manipulate energy to create or heal, and others that had destroyed themselves through greed and pride. As she moved deeper, she encountered obstacles, mental barriers, designed to protect the most dangerous or sensitive memories. At first, they appeared as blank spaces, empty voids that resisted her focus. When she tried to probe, the images twisted, became chaotic, and sometimes forced her to pull back. Each time, she felt a surge of dizziness, as though her own mind was rebelling against the weight of knowledge. "Kale, it's like parts of your mind are locked," she said, her voice strained. "I can't access them without being overwhelmed." "That is true," Kale said calmly. "Some memories are too powerful to confront without preparation. They contain truths that could unbalance your perception if you are not careful. You must proceed slowly, step by step." Leora nodded, taking a deep breath. She understood now that this was not just an experiment. It was a test of endurance, of mental strength, of the ability to navigate and understand knowledge far beyond human limits. She could not rush. She could not panic. She had to be methodical. With steady focus, she approached the first locked memory. It appeared as a shimmering wall of light, constantly shifting and changing. She felt the pull of its energy, the weight of the civilization it represented, and the echo of its rise and fall. Carefully, she guided her consciousness into the memory, letting it envelop her gradually. Instantly, she was in a world of motion and energy. Cities moved with purpose, their structures alive and adaptive. Beings communicated in bursts of light and sound, coordinating with precision. And yet, she could sense underlying tension, mistakes made, resources mismanaged, and the faint shadow of disaster looming. She observed carefully, piecing together the lessons hidden within. Hours passed, though time felt meaningless in Kale's mind. Leora moved from one memory to another, unlocking fragments of history, learning patterns, and absorbing knowledge. She saw civilizations that had mastered the elements, harnessing energy from stars to build magnificent structures and travel across galaxies. She saw others that had failed, consumed by conflict, unable to cooperate or adapt. Each memory was a lesson, a warning, and a guide. But the deeper she went, the more dangerous it became. One memory was filled with chaotic energy storms, remnants of a civilization destroyed by its inability to control raw power. Another revealed a society that had collapsed due to miscommunication and mistrust, showing her the fragility of cooperation. Leora felt herself struggling to keep focus. Her head throbbed, and she could feel the weight of countless lives pressing on her mind. Kale. "It's too much," she whispered. "Some of this, it's almost impossible to process. You can endure it," Kale replied gently. "Your mind is strong. Trust yourself. Each step is a lesson. Do not fear the knowledge it is meant to guide, not to harm." With his guidance, Leora learned to compartmentalize, to process each memory carefully before moving to the next. She discovered patterns in the chaos. Civilizations that thrived shared common traits: cooperation, respect for knowledge, adaptability. Those that failed ignored warnings, fought among themselves, or sought power without understanding. Slowly, she began to see the larger picture, a roadmap of survival for humanity. Then came the memory she had feared most, the core of Kale's warning, a fragment of the cosmic anomaly that had destroyed countless worlds. It appeared as a swirling mass of energy, indifferent yet unstoppable. She could feel its presence like a weight pressing against her mind. It was not alive, not in the way she understood life, but it was intelligent in its effect. It reshaped matter, energy, and even time around it, consuming anything unprepared. Leora's hands shook as she tried to focus. The scale of what she was seeing was beyond comprehension. Entire star systems could be affected. Planets could be consumed or altered. And humanity was completely unprepared. "You must not panic," Kale's voice echoed. "This is a warning, not a prophecy. You have the chance to act. Knowledge is preparation." "I understand," Leora said, her voice trembling. "But how do we prepare for something like this?" "You learn first," Kale said. "Then you teach. Then you act. Knowledge is the first and most important step." For hours, she continued to navigate his mind. Each memory, each layer, offered insight into survival, adaptation, and cooperation. She saw technologies beyond human imagination, strategies for navigating cosmic anomalies, and principles of harmony that civilizations had used to thrive. And she began to understand her role. She was not just observing. She was learning to guide, to teach, to prepare humanity for what lay ahead. By the time she emerged from the Neuralink, she was exhausted. Sweat clung to her forehead, her hands trembled, and her mind buzzed with information. Yet within her exhaustion was clarity. She now held a framework, a set of lessons, and a roadmap for humanity's future. The challenge had been immense, but she had succeeded. Kale looked at her calmly. "You did well. Few humans could endure what you have just experienced. Few could extract knowledge without being overwhelmed." Leora nodded, her resolve firming. "We have much work to do. Humanity cannot afford to ignore this. We have to teach, prepare, and act," as Kale said. "But first, you must rest. Even the strongest mind needs time to integrate knowledge. When you are ready, we will continue. There is still more to learn, and the universe does not wait for hesitation." Leora leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes. She could feel the weight of the memories in her mind, the lessons she had learned, and the responsibility she now carried. She realized that the challenge had not been merely to witness Kale's mind, it had been to survive it, to process it, and to transform knowledge into understanding, and somewhere in the depths of Kale's consciousness. The warning waited, patient and unyielding. Humanity's future depended on what they would do with it. As the stars outside Elysium 9 continued to shine, cold and distant, Leora understood one thing clearly: the journey had only just begun. The real challenge lay ahead, not in seeing, but in preparing, teaching, and guiding humanity to rise above fear and ignorance. And with Kale's guidance, she was ready to face it. The corridors of Elysium 9 were filled with a quiet urgency. Dr. Leora Dane moved swiftly through the station, her mind still alive with the images, lessons, and warnings she had absorbed from Kale's mind. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her. Humanity's future depended not just on knowledge, but on understanding, cooperation, and the courage to act. Kale followed her silently, his presence calm and steady. He had been a guide, a mentor, and a teacher through the labyrinth of his mind. Now, it was time to bring the knowledge to the rest of humanity. "We must begin immediately," Leora said, her voice firm. "We have to share what I've seen. Simulations, lessons, guidance, everything. The people of Earth and the colonies must understand the threat, and more importantly, what they can do to survive and thrive." Kale nodded. "They are not ready for the full scope yet. You must begin slowly, building understanding. Humans fear what they do not comprehend." Leora paused at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "I understand. But I also know that delay is dangerous. The anomaly is coming, and time is short." Together, they began the work. Leora designed immersive simulations based on the lessons from Kale's mind. Holographic projections displayed alien cities, energy patterns, and civilizations in crisis and harmony. Humans could interact with them, learning strategies for cooperation, adaptation, and survival. Every detail was carefully chosen to teach without overwhelming, to inspire without frightening. The first demonstration was held on Elysia 9 itself. Leaders of the orbital colonies, scientists, and advisors gathered in the main hall, their eyes wide with curiosity and skepticism. Leora took the stage, Kale standing beside her, his calm presence reassuring. "What you are about to see is not fiction," Leora began. Her voice echoed across the hall. "It is knowledge. Knowledge that could save humanity. We have glimpsed worlds beyond our own, civilizations that thrived and failed, forces that can shape the future of entire galaxies. What you learn here may determine whether humanity survives and thrives or falters." The simulations began. The audience gasped as holographic cities formed from light, alien beings communicated through pulses and colors, and entire worlds evolved in seconds before their eyes. Leora guided them carefully, explaining the lessons embedded in each memory: cooperation, adaptability, respect for knowledge, and the dangers of pride and ignorance. Kale added his perspective, speaking softly but with authority. "The universe is vast and indifferent. Many civilizations have failed, not because of malice, but because they did not understand the forces around them. Knowledge is the shield against destruction. Understanding is the sword against chaos. Humanity has the potential to survive, but only if it learns." For hours, the audience engaged with the simulations, learning, questioning, and observing. Leora noticed subtle changes in their expressions: skepticism turning into curiosity, curiosity turning into determination. The lessons were sinking in. Humanity was beginning to awaken. Later, Leora and Kale moved to Earth itself, where governments and scientific communities were initially cautious. But when they presented the same simulations, showing the patterns of survival and failure, disbelief began to fade. Humans could see the lessons firsthand. They understood that the threat was not supernatural, not a monster to fight, but a force of nature, a challenge to be understood and met with preparation and cooperation. Leora's voice grew stronger as she addressed larger audiences. "We have the power to learn. We have the power to adapt. We are not helpless. But we must act together. We must share knowledge, cooperate, and respect the lessons of those who came before us, 7 those from worlds far beyond our own." Across Earth and the colonies, a shift began. Scientists collaborated in new ways, sharing data and simulations openly. Engineers and strategists designed technologies inspired by the civilizations Leora had seen. Communities learned to work together, preparing for challenges on both small and large scales. Humanity's perspective was changing not just on survival, but on its place in the universe. Kale observed quietly, a faint smile on his face. "They are learning," he said. "Slowly, but they are awakening." Leora nodded. It's not just survival anymore. It's growth, understanding, and preparation. We're shaping the future, one lesson at a time. But the cosmic anomaly was still out there, moving silently, indifferent, yet unstoppable. Leora knew that knowledge alone was not enough. Humanity would need to act wisely, use resources carefully, and cooperate across every boundary. Every simulation, every lesson, was a step toward that readiness. One day, Leora reviewed the latest projections in the lab. Kale spoke. There is something else you must understand. Knowledge is not static. It evolves. The anomaly may be distant now, but the universe will continue to change. Your species must continue to learn, adapt, and grow, not just to survive, but to thrive.
Ow.
Leora smiled faintly. Then that is what we will do. We will teach, we will prepare, and we will rise to the challenge. Together, they continued their work, expanding simulations, creating educational programs, and guiding humanity through the complex lessons from Kale's mind. Slowly but surely, the people of Earth and the colonies began to internalize the knowledge, learning not only about the anomaly, but about themselves, their potential, and the vastness of the cosmos. Months passed. Humanity's understanding grew, and with it, confidence. Space programs accelerated, alliances strengthened, and technologies inspired by the alien civilizations began to take shape. Humans no longer saw themselves as alone. They were part of something larger, connected to the universe through knowledge, understanding, and cooperation. One evening, Leora and Kale stood together on the observation deck of Elysium 9, watching the stars. The same stars that had once seemed distant and indifferent now felt like points of connection. Each one a possibility, a lesson, a history waiting to be understood. Do you think we can face it? Leora asked quietly. Kale turned to her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. Yes, humanity has potential. It is learning, growing, and preparing. The anomaly is powerful, but knowledge, cooperation, and courage are stronger than any force of nature. You have given them the tools. Now they must use them. Leora felt a warmth in her chest. The fear she had felt during the first experiment, the awe and terror of Kale's mind, had transformed into hope. Humanity was awakening, and for the first time, she believed they could survive whatever the universe threw at them. In the months that followed, humanity's perspective continued to shift. Space exploration became more than a dream. It was a necessity, a path toward understanding and preparation. Education and collaboration expanded, inspired by the lessons from Kale's mind. Scientists, engineers, and leaders worked together. Guided by knowledge and the wisdom of civilizations that had come before, Leora continued her work tirelessly. But now she was no longer alone. Humanity had joined her in understanding, preparing, and shaping its own future. The screams of awe and fear she had felt in the lab were replaced by excitement, determination, and purpose. The unknown was still vast, still challenging. But humanity was no longer helpless. Kale watched quietly, knowing that his task was nearly complete. He had given them the knowledge, the warnings, and the lessons. Now, it was up to humanity to rise, to grow, and to prove that they could survive and thrive in a universe that was vast, indifferent, but full of potential. On a clear night, Leora looked out at the stars, thinking back to the first moment she had connected with Kale's mind. She had screamed then, not just from fear, but from awe. She had seen the infinite, and it had shaken her to the core. Now, she smiled. Humanity had begun to awaken. They were learning, growing, and preparing. And when the cosmic anomaly arrived, they would face it with knowledge, courage. In unity, the stars above Elysium 9 continued to shine. Bright and indifferent, but now they seemed to hum with possibility. Humanity was ready as any species could be when standing on the threshold of the unknown. And Dr. Leora Dane knew one truth clearly. The scream she had once let out in fear had been the first step toward awakening a species to its infinite potential. She turned to Kale, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and determination. "Thank you," she said. Kale smiled faintly. "You did the work. You guided them. I only showed the way. Humanity is ready to take the next step." And together, they stood in the quiet lab, looking out at the universe full of challenges, lessons, and infinite possibilities. Humanity had awakened, and this was only the beginning.